Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to your favorite witchy podcast. This is your host, Jasmine, and I have a lovely guest back on the podcast with me this evening. Go ahead and
Hi,
introduce yourself.
everybody. Hi. My name is Paige. I am Jasmine's friend. I'm a witch from Indiana, and I'm here to talk about some fun witchy topics tonight.
And tonight's topic, we are going to be capturing cryptids. Capturing cryptids with this
Yes,
cute,
and I'm
cute
super
picture.
excited about that.
So, okay, how do we define what cryptids are? We should probably, like, in our own words, for those who might be listening who maybe aren't familiar with cryptids, how would you explain what a cryptid is to someone who doesn't know what a cryptid is?
I think a cryptid is just a non-human mythological creature that is folklore based. I think it has a lot to do with local folklore. I think it has a lot to do with local mythology, and I think that quite simply it's monsters. I think that a lot of it's just monsters, and it's interesting too because I think cryptids too are like regionally defined. Each area of the world has their own version of a cryptid, from the Goat Man to the Loch Ness to Bigfoot to, like every area has their own little form. So I think it has to be tied to region as well. So like a regional folklore based, non-human, non-animal, supernatural creature.
Yeah, that's a much better definition than probably what I could have given. Because when I think of like cryptids, I think of like just unidentifiable things. Like not like UFOs, because those are like unidentified flying objects, but like unidentified things on the earth that, yeah, monsters. We'll go with that. Critters, as they call them in the hills and the hollers. So we went on this cryptid trip. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so oh my gosh. So me and my husband and a couple of friends that I played Dungeons and Dragons with um were really big fans of Mothman, and we were planning this trip. And basically, so you've seen Hellier, right? Like Hellier is a great show. Hellier is if you haven't seen it out there, if you go to Hellier's HELLIER.TV, it's free to watch on the website. It's a show by the Newkirks, which is a couple. They're kind of like modern day. Oh, what's that couple from The Conjuring? They're kind of like
Ed and Lorraine Warren.
yeah, they're kind of like modern day Warrens, only without the Christianity, right? Like Greg and Dana. Dana is a witch; she's a hedge witch, and then Greg is a paranormal enthusiast, and they've been investigating paranormal for years. And they did this documentary called Hellier about goblins in Kentucky, in Hellier, Kentucky. So we all watched that and we were like, we gotta go to these places because it sounds crazy. Like the stories sounded really cool. Plus, Mothman is always, been a big interest of all of ours. So we
And
planned to
and
go. Oh, go
Paige,
ahead.
I will say you are the one who really got me turned on to a lot of this, because I hadn't known Hellier before you, I think, kind of directed me to it. Or maybe I had seen a little bit of it, but like I'm pretty sure that I caught a lot of Hellier from YouTube. So I don't know if like what's available on YouTube is the same as the website.
Yeah, it used to be all. I think it still is all on YouTube. Yeah, it's
Okay,
all
then
on YouTube.
I think I've seen all of 1 and 2 then, because there's 2 seasons as of now, right? Or have they released
Yeah,
more?
They're gonna release more, but it'll probably be a while because they have to wait on, evidence to come up. But yeah, it's all on YouTube as well.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and it's all free and it's really good. So I highly recommend it. If those listening do nothing else, go watch Hellier. Like
It
honestly,
is
you'll
very, yeah, it is very enjoyable. And I was super stoked um, when Paige invited me to go on this trip. It was super last minute and it just so happened to work out perfectly that I was able to go. And it was so much fun.
yeah. Yeah, so we went on it was a whirlwind 3-day trip. Like we left Indiana, we went to Somerset, Kentucky, and then from Somerset we went to West Virginia. We went to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where Mothman stuff was, and then we left West Virginia and came back to Indiana, all in 3 days. So it was kind of a quick thing. Though that's my one biggest regret of the trip. Like I had a blast, but one of my things is I wish we would have been able to stay a little bit longer. We didn't plan it for longer because like some of us had to take off work, and like Jordan and I have a child, so like we didn't want to be away from our son very long. Um, so it was just kind of like we were sort of restrained by real world responsibilities. But I
We
really would
still had
love.
a really good time though.
We
And
did.
like, even though it was kind of like a whirlwind and a little bit of like whiplash, like it's a very fond memory of mine. And it was definitely a bonding experience because and for those of you listening, like I also shared my experience of Whispers Estate with Paige as well. Like Paige was a huge part of my Whispers Estate experience, as I'm sure you maybe already have seen some of that. If you haven't, there's experience videos about Whispers Estates on the channel. I did a podcast episode about this, and Paige was there too. And so we went to Whispers and then we went on this cryptid trip, and that's really how, like, I feel like we really bonded a lot through
Yeah.
the supernatural, the paranormal, the strange, the kooky, and the unusual, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, we had some really cool adventures on that trip. So like first of all, like driving through the hills of Kentucky and Tennessee
Terrifying. Fucking
and West
terrifying.
Virginia.
Let me just say, you guys, so how many seaters was the car that we rented? It was like what, a 6-seater car, an 8-seater car?
Yeah, it was a 6-seater.
It was
But there was
pretty
only
big.
3 of us in there because the other
Yeah.
2 people drove separately.
Yeah. So I basically had the entire back for the most part of this rental car to myself. Um along with like our luggage and stuff like that. But like it was a hell of an experience. And like I've been through Appalachia before. Um but it had been quite some time, and I forgot like how sketchy some of those roads are. And you guys, I have a very fond memory of being in the back seat and like Paige is driving, and like at a certain point on the trip when we're driving, like you can't see where the road ahead of us is going to go. Like we're not sure like if it's going to turn left, right, down, like because we're going uphill and it's like super sketchy. And I could definitely tell that like Paige was having like one of those mom moments where it's like inside like panicking, but on the outside trying to like remain calm, because like I feel like Jordan and I were both a little sketched out about the roads. And it was kind of like that metaphor of a duck where it's like they're all peaceful on top, but under the water, they're treading like hell. And I mean, we made it there and back in one piece, and Paige is a great driver. But
Oh,
yeah,
thanks.
I definitely have I definitely have a fond memory of that. And same with like the whiplash. Like even though it was crazy and would it have been nice to stay an extra day each place? Sure. But like being on the road was kind of part of the chase and part of the fun, I think.
Yeah, it really was. It was some cool scenery too. Like we were driving through mountains and hills, and oh my gosh, when we got to this is not really on well, this is on topic of cryptids, but like also not. So we get to Somerset, right? I rented this Airbnb. It's a really nice cabin in the middle of the woods in Somerset, Kentucky, right near Lake Cumberland. And Lake Cumberland's a huge lake. And like the cabin is super nice, like really modernized and beautiful. It's a beautiful A-frame. And we're following the directions to get there. And as we're going through these winding roads, we kind of see some of what Jasmine would later say, some of the most interesting living conditions because we're driving through this trailer park. And when I say trailer park, I mean like
Yeah, no, I don't even
not,
think I would call it a trailer park. I mean, this was
it was a
it
shanty town.
it was really kind of, to me, it was like the projects of the holler. And like I'm a city girl and like I know the city life, you know what I mean? But like this was really honestly sad, I think, like just some of the
Mm-hmm.
conditions because like some of these homes look like I could have put them together, and if I can put it together, they should not be inhabited by a human being.
Yeah, they looked like they were held together with, and I'm not laughing at these people's plight, although I want to be clear about that. It is sad. And like it's sad that in our country where we have, so much money and so many resources that people live this way. It's sad that they have to. But as we're driving through, it looked like some of them were just like stacked haphazardly on top of each other.
It literally
Um,
looked like someone had gotten sheds from like Lowe's and just used a
yeah.
hammer and nail and a handsaw and put them together. Like it was just very humbling, and it was very sad, and it was very strange that we were going to this really, really, I mean, incredible cabin that was walking distance from these other homes. And it made me kind of wonder too, like, you know, what what the locals thought about some of the Airbnb properties that I'm sure are up and down the river.
Yeah. It was a really surreal moment is basically like why I brought that up because really, like I said, a part of cryptid um stories and cryptid mythology is knowing the locale and knowing the locals and really engrossing yourself in that. And so you have to kind of see like, okay, this is the kind of place we are at. Like, we're at a place that probably doesn't have a lot of indoor plumbing. We're at a place where people are kind of haphazardly holding their houses together with two by fours and a prayer. Or at a place where they're surrounded by people trying to gentrify their area with Airbnbs like the ones that we were staying in. And I think there were a couple others close by that we drove past. So it definitely is an interesting area just for that alone. So, but anyway, we didn't have any issues. Like we were totally safe. We were totally fine. Like nobody bothered us. We didn't really see many people. We did see like a dad and his kids. Like the kids were like playing on our way up there. They did kind of give us a sideways look, but I think it was more like, a car was coming and we were obviously not people from around there.
Yeah, I think we
Um,
also like definitely everywhere we went, we stuck out. Like
mhm.
it was, very clear that we were different than the area's general populace. And also, like, I think of like the car that we were in. Like,
Yeah, we were
I
in a
think,
nice rental car.
yeah.
I also like it's interesting because we spent most of our time in like the outskirts of the town. When we went to downtown Somerset, like we went to this place called the International Paranormal and Research Museum, which I highly recommend checking out. It's a little bitty museum in the basement of their like city county building downtown. But if you're near Somerset, you should definitely look at it. It's great. If you watch Hellier, you will get to see them go there. But it's a really cool place, and we got to like have a really nice conversation with the young lady that worked there about like some of the mysteries of Somerset. But most of our time was spent in the outskirts of town where we were very different. Like Jordan and I, like and you two are all like tattooed. We had some, people with us that were trans and like we're all city people and we're dressing like and acting like ourselves, and these people are like very conservative. There were Trump flags everywhere. There were it was very obvious that we were just like not from around there, and it's small town life. One of the weirdest experiences we had was going into a Mexican restaurant
Oh,
called the
please let me
sea
tell it.
Yeah, tell the
Please let
story.
me tell this.
It's called the Speedy Taco. So if you're
Okay.
ever in Somerset,
Yeah.
go to the Speedy Taco. Tell the story. It's crazy.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to have words with the Airbnb hosts because I'm pretty sure they recommended this place.
They did like over and over again
And
in like
I
more than one place.
and I'm very suspicious of their recommendation. I want answers. These mysteries are still unsolved. We went to this place called Speedy Taco because it was pretty close and it was like an actual restaurant, you know, like not just eating like gas station food and not just fast food, but like an actual restaurant. And like Mexican food here in like the Midwest, like you have like better restaurants and you have okay restaurants. But honestly, I've never really been to one that was like really, really, really bad. Right. And so I was like, okay, well, like, I'll probably get some quesadillas, eat some chips and salsa. It'll be cool. I don't know how many people are familiar with backrooms. How would we describe backrooms? Like alternate states of reality outside of the matrix, I guess. Is that how you would describe it, Paige?
Yeah, like a holding center in the
Yeah.
Matrix, like a waiting room, and not a pleasant one.
Right.
Not a
And
pleasant one.
so we're all convinced that this restaurant was that. So we walk in, and like, I think the first thing I noticed was like, there's noticeably no air conditioning. Like, and it's very hot. When did we go on our cryptid trip? Was that July?
It was mid June in the
Mid June.
Midwest, and it gets
Yeah.
very hot. It was like 80, 90 degrees outside.
Like hot to the
Hot,
point where you don't even want,
humid.
yes, you don't even want the hair on the back, like laying on the back of your neck. It's so hot. Like, and the first thing I noticed was there was no air conditioning. But we learned later that there's just no air conditioning at all anywhere around there, anywhere, pretty much. But also they had a salsa bar, which I was just kind of like, in the heat of a pandemic Lovato, I don't know. Like, I don't know about that. It was just kind of strange. And then like we get seated and this nice waiter comes over and is like, "Can I get you guys started with anything to drink?" As waiters do. And in typical Jasmine Ambrosia fashion, I was like, "Oh yeah, like I'll have a margarita, like no flavor, just plain, not on the rocks or like not frozen on the rocks and like no salt, no sugar or whatever. Like I just wanted a margarita." And he was like, "Oh, we don't sell alcohol." And he looked at me right in my eyes and said this to me. He was like, "We don't serve alcohol." And I was like, I had this like guttural reaction because I thought he was totally kidding. Like I was like, surely he's kidding. Like, surely they serve margaritas at this Mexican restaurant. So I was like, "You're kidding." And he was like, "No." And then I remember kind of like looking at the table and like everyone's kind of like looking at me. And I remember thinking, like, is Ashton Kutcher going to pop up and we're going to be on Punked or something? Like, this cannot be real. This cannot be real. Like, but no, they really did not serve alcohol. And then, yeah, so that was highly unsettling. I was very unsettled. And then we noticed that they were playing like evangelical gospel radio in the restaurant.
Which they never play in Mexican restaurants. It's always like mariachi type, very happy, like, Latino music. It's never gospel. And it was confusing too because everybody that worked there seemed like they were Latino, So I was like, why are we playing like country, gospel, evangelical, Baptist
It was
music? It was
very
very
it was
strange.
very weird. Um, Very weird. Also, we all ordered different things. This is important for the story. We all ordered something different from the menu, but you could have probably taken all of our meals individually and put them in a blender and served them to us in glasses and kind of like scrambled them up and made us try to guess which one was our meal. They all tasted the same. Like the rice, the beans, the tortillas, like everything on the plate tasted the same. It was very bizarre. Like everything somehow tasted like nothing, while at the same time had like a hint of that fried flavor. Kind of like a white claw, like a mango white claw. It's a hint of mango, but it's mostly static, like LaCroix. That's like what this food was like. It was like nothing with a hint of something fried, but nothing distinguishable. So
Yeah, it was really, really odd. I remember like we all kind of took bites of each other's food And
Like,
I
can you
know it was,
taste anything? Can you taste
yeah,
anything?
I think the most flavorful thing was the extremely hot sauce that our friend Nick had gotten. And he was like, try this. This tastes like something. And all it tasted like was just super hot.
It was
That's
just
all it
hot.
was.
Yeah, it didn't even have a flavor. It was just hot.
Yes. And then when we left, tell them about when we left, what we saw when we went to
Oh
like
my
pay.
gosh. This was also very concerning. So we go up to go pay, and it's one of those places where you have to like take your check up to the counter to, pay your tab. And there's like a whole family like in this kitchen area while they're like making food, like scarfing down popsicles. Like their lives
Yeah.
depended on it. Like I'm talking unhinging your jaw, throwing back popsicles. Like it was a bewildering moment. It was
It
very
was so
bewildering.
weird. It was so weird. Oh, it was so weird. And we had breakfast the next morning at a local diner,
Oh
if you would
God.
call it a diner. And the experience was similar in that like
Yes.
the food was fine, I guess. The
No air
food tasted
conditioning.
better, but
No
yeah, no air
air
conditioning.
conditioning. Oh my
And
God, no air conditioning.
every single person in there could not stop staring at us.
And
Like,
wasn't this diner, didn't it used to be like a church? I think we
yes,
found out
it was
like
like a trailer that used to be a church, and it felt like
literally
that.
it was like a really big, nice trailer on like the side of
Yeah.
the road, like a gravel road, I guess. And like they had running water. But it was strange because it was very like it was a diner, but it didn't feel like a diner. And it was also strange because every single person in this diner, they all seemed like they knew each other. And it was very evident that like we were not from there and like everyone was like hardcore staring at our table, whether it's because we're alternative people, we're trans people, queer people, whatever. Like it was just whatever the reason was, even if it was just like they could tell that we were from out of town, right? Maybe it had nothing to do with our who we are as people, but just we weren't locals and maybe they're just not used to non-local people stopping there. But it was a weird experience. I did like the food there better, but it also
Hmm.
was pretty bland.
It was, yeah. But it was interesting to get a feel because like I said, if you're gonna go on a cryptid trip, you really kind of need to feel out the locale. I feel like
I
to kind of
agree.
get an idea, and we definitely felt the locale on that trip,
Oh, for sure.
especially to that specific one. But to get to the cryptid part, the reason we went to Somerset is has a lot of caves, so it's part of the Kentucky cave system and Mammoth Cave system, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, cave system in the world. Um, and there are a lot of crazy stories about the Mammoth Cave system. And so we were kind of hoping to hear stories and experience this area for ourselves. So we went to this international paranormal research center and museum, and we talked to the young lady who worked there, and I cannot remember her name, but she was great. Um, and she sat and talked to us for a while on our way out about the caves and stuff. And she basically said that a lot of the caves are sealed up there now, because Hellier did go there and investigate, and because Hellier got so popular, the town like didn't like it. I guess the people who were there, the Hellier crew was getting like death threats from people in the town. People were like really upset and protesting because the stories with that cave have to do with goblins. That's like one of the primary cryptids in that area is like goblins, and like there have been lots of stories of people finding three-toed footprints in the caves. And we were hoping to like kind of find a cave to kind of look in, but she told us like no, all the caves are sealed up, all the entrances are sealed up. The only way
Well,
you can really
and
get
yeah,
into a
she also
cave is
told us,
private property.
yeah, and she also told us exactly. I was going to say the private property thing. She told us that like we should really practice some pretty extreme caution because people don't take too kindly to trespassers, and it can be hard to tell if you are trespassing on someone's land or not because like it's not always marked. And so she was pretty clear that it wasn't a super good idea because a lot of them were blocked off, but also it was a pretty unsafe idea to be traversing around and uncharted lands that we weren't familiar with.
Yeah, which is why we didn't really do a lot of cryptid actual like cryptid investigating while we were there. Which sucked, but at the same time, like I'm not trying to get shot. I don't want my friends to get shot.
Right, right.
And I definitely think that we, as much attention as we were already kind of drawing, I didn't want to venture into areas that weren't ours. We did go on one adventure in Somerset to a place called Soul's Chapel, and it's a cemetery. It's a very old cemetery in like the middle of the woods. And getting there was like kind of confusing because we did trespass on somebody's private property and had to like turn around to find the right road to get to Soul's Chapel. It's rumored to be like extremely haunted. And it used to be the site of like an old church, and you can still see the foundation and the steps of the old church there. But the rest of the building is down. And we went there and we did like some spirit boxing and
Well,
we
isn't
tried
there
to like,
isn't there some kind of story about the church too?
oh yeah, that the pastor like went crazy and did he did he was it like a suicide cult or something?
I thought the story was something along those lines.
Yeah, I can't recall exactly. It was like a legend that I found online about Soul's Chapel, but that's like kind of the story of it, right? Like
Yeah.
there was like a weird pastor that came in and took over, and it was like kind of a suicide cult situation.
And this is a super small graveyard. Pretty sure it's
Hmm.
actually a graveyard, right?
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah,
cemeteries are not connected to churches. Graveyards
yeah,
are, yeah.
yeah. And it's pretty small. Like, I'm not sure if a lot of the people buried there were members of the church or family or friends of the church or what. But like, I wouldn't say there could have been more than, what do you think, 50 graves, 60
Yeah,
graves?
there
Like,
weren't that many, and a lot of them were like fallen over,
very
very
old.
not taken care of at all.
Some of them,
And there was,
interestingly, too, almost kind of reminded me of obelisks.
yeah, they did. They did. There was some interesting architecture with them. And like there was also like this these woods with like a trail that went into them like right next to them. And we were there like right at sunset, which was an interesting time. But unfortunately our time there was also cut short because of ticks.
These fucking ticks, man. Like, I like to think that I'm a pretty rootin' tootin' pistol whipping Annie kind of tough cookie, okay? Like, I can handle it. But I got one tick on me and I was ready to go.
Yeah, you were like, I'm out of here. I'll take the Whispers basement over these
Like,
fucking ticks.
I can't handle it. Like, I literally had Paige when we got back to the cabin. I was like, you are gonna have to search me for ticks. Like, I'm not gonna be able to sleep. Like, I was even like itching in the car because I was just like, I'm gonna find one on me. I just know it.
Yeah, and we were all of us were like, it's not really worth. And we were getting like eaten alive by mosquitoes out there, even though we all had spray because it was in the middle of the woods, right? So we didn't stay super long because of the ticks. And I think that if I had to do that over, maybe I would go like, I would. It was definitely a cool place, and I wouldn't mind going back like sometime. But I would definitely go like maybe in the fall when it cooled off and like tick season
Yeah, it's got
kind
to be
of
that sweet spot,
left.
like where it's cold and all the bugs have died, but not where it's cold to the point where it's going to be icy. Because there's no way you're going to have me on those holler and hill roads with ice. There's absolutely no way. Like,
Uh,
I will just die
Me
in the back
either.
seat. Like,
Me either. Hell no. I
I,
definitely am
I
with you
just
on that
simply
one.
would not.
No, I don't. I wouldn't want to either. But that was our experience in Somerset, and it was cool. Like it was a really interesting kind of I want to say almost anthropological
Yeah.
experience instead
Well,
of
and we
like,
also kind of got like some interesting feedback from the spirits of that graveyard too.
yeah, a lot of it was you could hear preachers preaching obviously, and they were telling us to leave a lot.
Hmm. It was a
And
lot. It was very hostile for sure.
yeah, It was definitely like, "Get out of here," which kind of fit the whole, vibe of the whole town, like, towards us at least, not very super welcoming, which doesn't surprise me, and I don't blame them for that, and I'm not saying, you know, that that I don't know. I'm not putting it down
Right.
necessarily, I'm just
Right.
saying that's the way things are there. It's very conservative,
Absolutely. And I
it's
will
very
say,
isolated.
I will say too, for everyone listening, like, here's the thing, like, and if you're sensitive to like spirits or the dead, then I'm sure you maybe already know this, but like if you haven't really dabbled a lot with like mediumship, necromancy, or spirit work, like just because people are dead don't mean they want to talk to you. Like the dead are very much like the living in the sense that there are helpful people and there are helpful spirits and there are harmful people and sick people, just like there are harmful and sick spirits. And there are also plenty that really are just neutral and don't care and just kind of want to be left alone. Like, and the dead are very much the same way. So don't think that you're going to go to an old graveyard or visit someone at a cemetery or a quote unquote haunted space and you're this witch who's going to get this reaction, because chances are you might not get the reaction that you're thinking, or you might get no reaction. And that's pretty, I feel like, on par for working with spirits. Like, and even if you do have gifts, that doesn't mean that they're going to talk to you.
Yeah, it's, one of those situations where I think we all unanimously realized, and all of us are kind of, um, I don't wanna say, like, we're experts. I mean, maybe Jasmine has been doing this for, I know, longer than Jordan and I have, but
But there's really no experts. Like there are
right.
people with experience and there are people, with not as much experience, but especially with stuff like when it comes to the craft side of things, because like the technology part, yeah, I definitely think there are people who have more expertise with that. But when it comes to the craft based side, because kind of like when we went to Whispers, like we were kind of blending multiple different modalities of spirit work all
Mhm.
together. And I feel like from my standpoint, as someone who, only since really working with Paige have I gotten more versed in some of this technology used in spirit work. Like I feel like on the craft side of things, like if someone is telling you that they're an expert spirit worker or they're a medium expert or something, like I would be cautious.
Right, yeah. But you also have to know when to fold them, and that's kind of what we, determined while we were there, not only because of the ticks, but because there were just no helpful spirits there, at that time that really wanted to talk to us,
And
and
I remember leaving and going back to the cabin, and like the whole back side of this cabin is just one big glass window. And I remember thinking like there is no way. And because I was with two couples essentially. And so I think it was just kind of assumed that like I was probably going to sleep on the pull-out mattress and like both couples were going to take the bed, which like in any other circumstance, like cool, whatever. But I was trying to picture myself laying on this pull-out mattress that's right next to, by the way, this giant back glass window, which I know there are a lot of cultures that have a lot of superstitions around having open windows at night or leaving, curtains open at night. And like I'm very superstitious of that as well, with good reason. I don't consider it a superstition. Um, and I just kept thinking like I'm going to be half asleep and I'm going to see something through the glass, or something's going to tap on that glass, and like I simply will just not. Like um
yeah.
so I'd like talk to the group and I was like, okay, I'm sorry, but I cannot sleep on the pull-out mattress. So I ended up sleeping, technically the second bedroom was more like a loft, so I ended up sleeping up there. But the loft area and where I was sharing a room with was also very unsettling because there was an entrance to the attic basically on top of the bed. So that was fun.
Mm.
And
Mm, yeah.
the person who I was sharing that space with, like, and it could be one of those like um, hysterical sort of group fits, if you will, but like we both swore we kept hearing things inside of the attic. Like It sounded like something was in there. And at one point they were actually going to like try to open it. And I was like, hell no, don't fucking open it. Like it's at this point too, it's also 4 o'clock in the morning. Because we stayed up all night kikiing and everyone else was like going to bed. And I was like, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. What if there is something up there? I'm thinking like, what if there's a raccoon or something? Like I wasn't thinking about like spirits and stuff. I was thinking like there could be a family of raccoons up there. And it's 4 o'clock in the morning and we're in this Airbnb. And if you open that and if they come down here, what are we gonna tell Paige and Jordan? Like are we just gonna be like, don't panic? But there's 6 rabid raccoons in our Airbnb. Like
No. I'm glad that y'all didn't open that. But,
hell
you
no.
know, it was an interesting experience. And
And it
was
was a super
beautiful in the
nice
morning.
cabin. It
Oh,
was.
the cabin was gorgeous. Yeah. But then we got in the car and we drove 4 hours to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And we actually stayed in Gallipolis, Ohio, which is right across the river. But Point Pleasant, West Virginia is the site of the Mothman sightings. And if you guys don't know about the Mothman, I'll give you a brief overview. In the 50s, the late 50s, there were some sightings of this giant winged red-eyed creature in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which is a small town, as you can imagine. And they were first sighted by a couple making out near the old TNT manufacturing plant that had been abandoned. That's where they first saw him, near like the power plant and stuff out in the country. And he chased them in the car, like he was flying above and chased them, and they were in the car. It freaked him out. And there were several other crazy sightings by a bunch of people in town. John Keel wrote a book called The Mothman Prophecies, and they made a movie based off of it. But I highly recommend reading that book because John Keel is a boots on the ground journalist. Like, this is before the internet. So, like, John Keel went out there and interviewed personally every single person who had a sighting or an experience with the Mothman, and weird stuff started to happen to him because he was interviewing people. And he's a very like logical, level-headed person, and you can kind of tell that in his narrative. So again, like, you should read it or listen to it on Audible. It is on Audible as well. It's a great book. And basically it all culminated in this one crazy event that the Mothman was kind of the harbinger of doom, where the Silver Bridge, which is the bridge that went from Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio, collapsed, and 30 people, I think it was like 35 people or something like that, died. It was like right around Christmas time. The traffic was really heavy because people were doing their Christmas shopping, and the bridge collapsed. So if you go there, you can go to they have a really cool museum. They have a really cute downtown area that has like a lot of Mothman stuff. They got a statue. They've got a memorial site for the bridge. They've got a lot of little gift shops and stuff. Cute like coffee shop, restaurants. Like, it's a really nice vacation. Like, if you want to go, it's really fun. And then we also went and did some spirit boxing to see if we could talk to anybody who had died in the Silver Bridge collapse. So that was like our purpose. So we get in the car, we drive 4 hours the next like afternoon. We get to our Airbnb at like 4 or 5 p.m. that
There's a
night.
hot tub. I will let everyone know there
Yeah.
was a hot tub. I was in that thing as much as I possibly could be. It was amazing. Like it was gorgeous. It was
Yeah,
absolutely gorgeous. Also, Paige picks
it
really
was
good
like
Airbnbs.
thank you. Yeah, it was on the river, which was cool. And it was really cheap too. I think it was like $120 a night or something like that. But it was a nice Airbnb. We like hung out in the hot tub. We got pizza. We kind of just spent that evening
I was
relaxing.
so relieved to have that pizza. Like that was the first time I had any flavor in at least 24 hours.
Okay, that's not true because we did DoorDash
Oh yeah, no, we
Taco
got that
Bell,
Taco Bell. That's right. Okay, so that might have
and
been a
that was like,
slight exaggeration because I do remember getting a Crunchwrap Supreme and we were playing a board game and I go into the kitchen to grab my hot chips, and I'm like taking a spoon to hammer it into a powder. And if The girls who get it. The girls who don't. To put my hot chip powder into my Crunchwrap Supreme, and like everyone is just like looking at me. But yeah, but the pizza was
Definitely the
so
best.
good. The pizza was so good.
Yeah, the pizza was great, and the Taco Bell that night was the best Taco Bell I've ever had, probably after all
In
that
our
nasty.
lives. In our lives.
Yeah, it was. But we had pizza and we kind of relaxed. But then that evening, Jasmine gets it into her head that she wants to try cow balls.
No,
She
not
wants to eat
cow. They weren't cow. I
bull
thought they were
balls,
goat.
bulls, or goats or something. You want to
Lamb,
try
Rocky
Rocky
Mountain
Mountain
oyster.
oysters.
Something, yeah. And I looked up this place and there's this bar like a half mile away that on the website says they have them. Okay.
So we all get out of the hot tub, get dressed, pile in the rental car, and drive to this bar at like, I don't know, it's like 8 or 9 p.m. on like a weeknight in Gallipolis, Ohio. And it's like the smallest bar. It's a pretty tiny bar. I mean, it's not small, but it's tiny. It's a dive bar. And we get up to the counter and like
And
there
these bartenders.
oh my god. They were on something. They were talking like this and slurring their words. And it was
Yeah. And
really weird.
like I was trying to go in like investigator style. Like I was going to ask these bartenders because I'm thinking, who better to talk to in a small
Oh
town than
yeah.
the bartender? Like the bartenders see everything. They see who comes and who goes. They see the locals. They know the regulars. Like they hear everyone's stories. Like you want to talk to the bartender. And they basically just like girl boss gaslit and gatekeeped us while they slurred their words and were completely blitzed. Like I was genuinely concerned about them working behind the counter of like their ability to do their job.
Yeah, it was weird because they looked like a bunch of the older lady looked like an ex sorority woman, like they and then the girls that were working looked like sorority college girls, and but they were all like obviously on something.
Very hard. Something very
Yeah,
hard. Like we're not
yeah, it was.
talking like they lit up a doobie out back or anything. Like they were using illicit substances and were under the influence while serving.
Yeah, because they like couldn't make simple drinks. They were forgetting orders. They were Jasmine like even tried to ask them questions about the freaking Mothman because you would think that, every year they have a Mothman festival. Mothman draws a lot of tourists. It's a major tourist attraction in that area of the country. Like you would think these people would get people all the time coming in and saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to go see the Mothman Museum," but they acted like they had no idea what it was about. They were like, "Oh yeah, I guess there's like a festival or something sometimes or
And
something like that."
I'm not really sure if like it was because they were so under the influence or if they just didn't want to give us information. Either way though, I refuse to believe that they legitimately didn't know anything about it when they were literally right next to like one of the largest cryptid festivals in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, you think they get a lot of business from that, but I don't know. We were hitting a kind of a brick wall there. Well, then like a bunch of college kids, or probably more like high school age kids, pour into the bar, and it kind of starts to get crowded, which surprised a lot of us. That like so many younger people were coming to this dive bar, but whatever.
Into a
So then,
bar when a lot of them like I'm like, shouldn't you like be doing homework or something?
yeah, they looked very young, so that was weird. But then Jasmine goes out back because out back they have like a little patio where you can smoke and like they have some tables, and disappears out there for a while. And I'm like, I'm gonna go out and see where
And
Jasmine
I
went.
am doing my investigative work. I told y'all this. I'm an investigator.
So tell him about who you were investigating and what you found out then, and what he was investigating on your feet.
Uh Oh gosh. Well, we were at a bar, right? Like every good story starts. And first of all, I was convinced that I was going to try these goat balls or whatever they were because I feel like, when in Rome, right? Was not able to do so. I was also convinced that, I was gonna at least get some kind of good story. And so I couldn't get anything out of the bartenders. So I went out back and I was smoking, and there was this guy, and I'm like trying to talk to him about Mothman. And yeah, I think he was not as interested in, in talking about the Mothman as I was. I remember him saying something about, it was so long ago, Paige. He was saying something about like a shooting range or something, right?
Oh, he was talking about the TNT. So we wanted to go visit the TNT factory that's abandoned. It's not dangerous. It's abandoned now, because that's where a lot of Mothman activity was sighted back in the day, and that's also where they went in Hellier. And I thought it like looked like a cool place to kind of visit. And you asked him about that, and he's like, "Well, people like kind of use that as a shooting range now, so I wouldn't go out there because you might get shot."
Yeah.
So we decided not to. But he did kind of say that when I came out there, he did kind of say that, like, oh, people around here don't really like to talk about it. Like, he did kind of make that pretty clear.
Yeah, and
Like,
he
it
also made
doesn't,
it very clear that he was into feet.
yeah, he was a little creepy, but he did, he was basically saying, like, it didn't surprise him that nobody wanted to talk about it. And I was like, oh, okay. That's kind of odd. It's kind of strange.
Yeah.
And then we pretty much left there. And then later that night, we did some spirit boxing, and we got like a lot of activity, a lot of like spirits that seemed to want to talk to us. And they pretty much basically told us that the Mothman was going to show up next in New York City because the water supply was going to get poisoned. So heads up, New York City, if you got anybody out there, like that's kind of
Yeah,
what the
because like
spirits were saying.
there's a lot of things about the Mothman being like an omen of disaster too.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Um,
we were on the spirit box for like 45 minutes getting like
mhm.
very good, interesting um, communications from people who claimed that they were spirits that died in the accident with the spirit with the Silver Bridge. So it was neat.
I of course was in the hot tub while we were doing this, naturally. Naturally.
Oh, naturally, with a claw in hand,
Naturally.
you know. I mean, why not? But after that, we went to sleep. We were like all really tired, and we got up early the next day and went to and checked out of the Airbnb, and we went to the Mothman Museum and
Which was
spent some
amazing. Highly
time.
recommend it.
Yeah,
Highly recommend it.
yeah, it was really cool. We spent some
Also,
time in downtown.
the cute little cafe right next to the Mothman museum has really good coffee and adorable Mothman cookies.
Oh yeah, I remember that Mothman cookie. Yeah, that was cool.
And they were actually delicious too. It wasn't just cute, it was delicious as well. And the Mothman statue has cakes, you guys. Cakes. You got to
He
get a
really
photo with the
does.
Mothman.
He really does. Yeah, it was a lot of fun and highly recommend. I don't want to say like I had any, oh, I definitely found a cryptid kind of experience, but I think the experience was more about like learning about the locale and immersing yourself in the setting of where these cryptids hail from because it makes a lot of sense. Like you start to understand a lot of the mythology around them once you understand the land and the people. And we got very close to both things.
I
And I
really
think that
enjoyed
was,
talking to the locals, honestly. Like, as questionable as some of them were, like, that was probably my favorite experience, aside from sharing it with you and the rest of our group. Because I think with stuff like this, like, who you're with really, really, really can enhance or detract from the overall experience. And I mean, overall, we had a really good experience. We had a great group of people overall. And it was my favorite part. It wasn't that, we saw any Kentucky goblins or we were face to face with the Mothman, but I feel like we kind of were through the lens of, like Paige is saying, like the locale, like checking out the museums, talking to the locals who would talk to us, because there were some who did. That's to me what really made the trip worth it.
yeah, I agree. I think that if you go on a cryptid focused trip ever, and I recommend if you're at all interested in cryptids that you definitely should go on like a little Midwestern or West Coast, East Coast, whatever area of the country you're in trip. It's definitely worth it. just to immerse yourself in the setting and the mythology and kind of the culture that surrounds cryptids, because really ultimately, whether you believe in cryptids or not, that's what they are. They're a product of their culture and their environment.
Mm-hmm. And some of them might be aliens. And that's going to be another podcast episode, because I think that needs its own 45 to an hour long segment. I don't think we have enough time to talk about cryptids / aliens.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm totally down to talk about aliens. I love talking about aliens
So you can
anytime.
definitely expect to see Paige back on the podcast for As the Cauldron Bubbles, and we will be talking about something to do with aliens.
Yeah, aliens, UFOs,
You know.
all that good stuff. But yeah, the
Um,
cryptid thing was really cool, and I think everybody should try to experience something like that at some point.
I do too, and I would like to also say that I personally find the hottest cryptid to be the Goat Man. I was very pleased that I was able to actually acquire a Goat Man shirt that I hold very near and dear to my heart, because the Goat Man is Zaddy, and I plan to go see him in Popelet, Kentucky sometime soon. Just throwing that out there. Goat Man, if you are listening, this is an open invitation for you to come up here to Indianapolis. Thank you very much.
Goat Man is pretty attractive, especially in that on that shirt you got. He's
I
like
mean,
jacked.
I mean, you know, you know. But all right, let's wrap this up. Any do you have anything else? Any closing
Not
thoughts?
really. My
I
closing
think
thoughts are that I think cryptids are a really important part of our culture, our folklore, our Americanness. I mean, even though they're not exclusive to America, I think that every area has a cryptid. And if you don't know what your local cryptid is, then you should definitely do a little investigating into that, because I guarantee you there's one close by.
absolutely, and I completely agree. And just to piggyback off of what Paige said, I think it's super important. You know, I talk about all the time, like, I think as witches, it's important for us to know the land. And I think cryptids are a part of the land. And I know that there are some witches out there, and maybe some witches who are listening who are like, well, I'm not really sure how I feel about cryptids, or how like cryptids fit into my own personal cosmology or understanding. And the thing is like, regardless of whether you understand them, because I'm not sure I completely do, but I think that's kind of the thing about cryptids, is that they're not really understandable per se. There's lore around them, and they're connected to the land, but no one totally gets them. But I think in order for you to really have a relation with the land and the spirits of the land, you have to kind of include cryptids in that. And even if it's just like being more educated about them, I'm not necessarily saying like work with cryptids, but like, do you? You know, I know witches who work with, I guess, the Goblin King. I mean, all types of things, like Wonder Woman. Like, I mean, if you want to get into like the chaotic aspect of it all. But I think that you should keep an open mind about the cryptid stuff, right? And that it's important to get to know them. And like Paige said too, I believe there are cryptids to every single type of geography. So, I mean, I think that we kind of live in a hot spot um, where we live, like, since we live right next to Appalachia, like there's a ton of cryptids, but I'm sure you have something, and you just need to look into the cryptozoology of your area. So do that. That's your homework if you're listening to this podcast. And no, you don't need to turn it in, but that's your homework.
But if you have some cool cryptids in your area, send us a DM. We'll come check
Please,
it out. I
please.
want to go on another cryptid trip. So seriously, if you have any cool cryptids that no one really knows much about,
Yeah,
send the stories
Paige
my
and I
way.
will pull up. We'll pull up as the capturing cryptids crew, and we'll investigate for you. So make sure you check my links in the description, and send me a message for serious or business inquiries.
Hell yeah, brother.
All right. Thank you all for listening to this Capturing Cryptids episode of As the Cauldron Bubbles. Blessed be and see you in hell.